Hello, Strengths community. Welcome back. Well, time flies. This is week 4, and this is the week of strength spotting. So, today we have two brave souls from our community who is going to try strength spotting for the very first time. So the activity that they're going to do is basically they need to think of a time in the past where they have successfully activated a particular strength. So the task here for the other person is that as your partner is sharing the story of their past success, then your job is to activate your job is to find and spot the strengths besides the one that they think that they are describing. So it can even be strengths that is not listed in their VIA strengths report. Well, VIA is really just a starting point for all of us to get started in the language and in the lens of strength. So the best way for you to do this exercise, and please join in, please try to spot the strengths as well as you listen to the story. And also you can try this exercise with your family or friends. And this is most fun when it is done in the spirit of curiosity and complete focused attention with the objective of empowering and uplifting the person that is doing the sharing. Now, it also helps to start the process of creating a neural pathway in your brain to keep a lookout for strengths. So, moving forward, the more you activate and practice strength spotting, the stronger will be this neural pathway. Once it becomes habitualized, then it literally becomes a new and improved version of yourself. Before we get started, I want to address two myths or common concerns that people have about strength spotting. The first one is strength spotting makes me uncomfortable. Well, just like any new skills that you're trying to acquire, it will not feel natural at all in the beginning. So remember when you first learned to ride a bicycle, I bet it felt totally awkward. So likewise, be patient, and with the right practice, it will make you feel comfortable in no time. The second myth or concern that people have about strength spotting is that, oh, people will find me weird if I do strength spotting with them. They might be surprised because this is not the way you used to communicate with them. So again, but I'm very sure that they are happy that their strengths are being acknowledged, and especially if you are someone significant in their life. Again, the right practice will make others feel comfortable in no time as well. So keep communicating using the strength spotting skill can help to nourish high quality relationships and also increase positive emotions both in yourself and in the one that you're communicating with. So I hope that makes you feel better about strength spotting. So now let's get straight to the actual exercise, the strength spotting exercise with Laura and Kevin. Okay, Laura and Kevin, say hi.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, so are you guys ready for your strength spotting exercise? Let's see who can spot more strengths in the other person.
Yay.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Cav. Good to see you.
Likewise. Well, ladies first.
Okay, Laura. So why don't you start with your first story of strengths, and Kevin will spot your other strengths in this story. What story is this? What strength are you sharing about?
So I think the primary strength that I'm sharing about in this story is hope. So
Hope.
yes, so
Okay,
that's
let's go.
yeah. So I was saying earlier that during the briefing that my story is a little bit of an adventure, kind of an epic story. So I think it was last year, middle of last year, I actually got to travel to Lithuania for an entrepreneurship conference. And the way that I got there was by submitting an application, and so going through this whole selection process. But so I eventually ended up in Lithuania middle of last year, but the story actually started probably maybe even a year or a year and a half before that, when I went for a training event. And at that point, I was looking at what do I want to do with my life? What are my next steps forward? How do I plan what's my purpose, what do I focus on, what do I prioritize. And so during this event that I was at, one of the exercises we did was writing out our eulogy, just imagining the legacy that you want to leave at the end of your life. And so that was just a very immersive, very powerful, transformative experience for me. And it began to shift a lot of the trajectory and the priorities and the way that I was investing my time going forward. And so fast forward a few months, I think I was in Chiang Mai in Thailand for another conference, and I met a friend there. And so we were sharing, like the vision for our lives, where are we going to be in 5-10 years, because they are from another country, but they had moved to Chiang Mai at that time. And so we were just sharing like, okay, where are you going to be? What are your plans for the future? And this friend of mine was actually a week away from traveling to Lithuania. So he was telling me there's this conference, I've been selected, I put in this application, and these are the different things that they share about. They equip you for entrepreneurship, for your vision, for your life. And I was very happy for him at that time. And that kind of stuck with me. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because the guy who was organizing the conference, for him, it's a passion project. And so he actually goes through all the applications every year, and he selects, essentially, he curates a group of people that he wants to invest in and pretty much build a community of like-minded people. And so I think that, again, that just struck me, just that sense of, wow, I'd love to have that community of people who, have vision and a sense of, what they want to do in the world, how they want to make a difference, how they want to grow their businesses. So fast forward a year later, the conference, this entrepreneurship event was on again. So they opened the applications. And at that time, I was really wrestling with, should I put in an application? Because I travel on a Zimbabwean passport, and that's not the easiest to travel on in terms of some of the visa requirements and all of that. But I put in my application because I was like, the worst thing that can happen is I don't go, right? So put in my application. My husband and I applied separately. And so a month later, we got the results, and it turned out that we had both been selected for this entrepreneurship camp. So both of us had, put in different applications. And in my application, I had shared, like my eulogy, the vision that I want to leave, the work I want to do in Zimbabwe, leadership development, all these different things, my passion for women, my passion for emotional well-being. And so that was just very encouraging for me to be like, okay, this is a vision that someone wants to invest in. And at that point, that was just like step one in the journey, because then I had to figure out, how am I going to get to Europe on my Zimbabwean passport? And so started looking for a Lithuanian embassy, and it turned out that there was an embassy, I think it was in China, Japan, India, and I would have to apply for a visa to any of those countries to go and apply for a visa to Lithuania. And so we began this whole process of like, okay, how do I go? Which other countries can I go through in order to get to Lithuania? And so, and because of the time that we had as well, I think I had less than about 2 months or so to put in the application, and there was, the long waiting period before you even submit, going for the interviews at the embassy. And so I think I put in an application at like 3 or 4 local embassies. And thankfully, the French embassy was the one that had the earliest interview date. And so I went to the embassy, got all my papers, did the interview. And I think up until 2 or 3 days before we had planned to fly out, I had no idea if I was going to be at this conference. I had no idea if I was going to get my visa or not. So I was like, okay, Kenneth, in case I don't go, you go and have fun. But I think it was just that sense of like, okay, God, if you've opened up this opportunity, then, you need to make a way to make it happen, right? Like it's out of my control, it's out of my power. And so, yeah, because it was through France, we had to spend a couple of days there to justify applying for the visa. And so there was this very thin margin of time. And so it was literally, I think, 2 or 3 days before we had to fly out. they called and they were like, okay, you can come and pick up your passport. And I walked in and I was like, okay, moment of truth. And she's like, yes, you got your visa. And so that was when, you start, like we'd put in like some of the bookings for accommodation, but that's when you were like, okay, let's confirm, pay for the flight, pay for all these other different things, pack up our bags, and like within a couple of days, making our way to Lithuania. So I think, yeah, that was for me just a story of hope, and just the epic adventure of ending up in Europe, which I hadn't the faintest idea that I would end up there or through this method, because like I said, being on a Zimbabwean passport has its challenges, and so I was very thankful that I was able to make that trip last year, especially now with COVID and just all the borders shut down. At that time, it was like, oh, hopefully this isn't, a once in a lifetime opportunity. But hopefully when the world changes again, I'll have the opportunity to go again and visit and explore more.
Beautiful. Wow, what a beautiful story of hope. Indeed, it does sound like a story of hope. So thanks for sharing, Laura. So, Kevin, over to you.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Laura. Lithuania, wow, that's one country I've never been to. The closest was Gulliver's Travel in Lilliput. Okay, as you were sharing, I I was glancing at the character strengths chart as well because I haven't fully memorized the entire chart. But some of the things that struck me as you were sharing were the fact that I thought I saw indications of the strength of perspective in the earlier phase of your sharing. Perspective in the sense that you were looking at it from a very hopeful point of view, but not just hope, but also having the perspective that um, though it was challenging, you didn't want to lose out on the opportunity. And um, in the part where you were sharing with your friend in the other country, I felt that you had indicated or you were using your strengths of social intelligence, where from your experience you were also sharing with others, and from there you also drew strengths from others as well. I thought that was social intelligence at play. Um, it seemed like one of the main strengths that were forefront in you wanting to go to Lithuania was a combination of spirituality, as you felt that it was um, a blessing from God. But of course, along the way, the hurdles that you had to go through, I'm sure there were times that you felt doubtful. But your love of learning, I think, shone through. And of course, through it all, right till the very last minute, when you were able to actually secure the visa, that was the strength of perseverance that I saw in the story that you were relating. So, in summary, perspective, social intelligence, love of learning, perseverance, and spirituality were what I spotted as you were sharing your story.
Thank you.
Laura?
That's quite interesting, actually. I think some of those I hadn't considered. I think you're talking about like social intelligence. I'm like, oh, okay. I that hadn't crossed my mind, and love of learning. I think that's one as well that I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think that was part of the drive to grow and to really just invest in the future, right? As well as I think you mentioned perseverance. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like for me, it was hope, but I guess that does tie in with that sense of persevering and finding a way and just hoping for the best. So thanks for sharing that.
You're
Mm.
welcome.
So this is a perfect example, and it's really very common how people always get surprised. Oh, I never see it that way. I never realized that I was activating these other strengths as well. Like in this case, social intelligence was a big surprise for Laura. She was activating that strength, but she didn't realize it. So that's the power of strength spotting. You help to support the other person by giving them a new perspective, a new wider perspective of what's going on and what they've been activating, and they don't even realize it. And so I'm going to share what I strength spot in your story. There are some similarities with Kevin, and again, there are also other strengths that I spotted, which is also to highlight everyone have different perspectives, and it is really powerful when you can embrace other people's perspective that is the perspective of empowerment. So definitely for me, this is a story of hope. Like from the beginning to the end, and even this whole thing is done, you still express further hope for what's to come. So this is definitely a story of hope from what I can see. But I also saw the strength of teamwork, because you saw something that you really like, and then you said, I would love to have a similar community. So with that also come also the, I think, the strength of appreciation of excellence. You like what you saw, and you kind of, it planted some kind of hope and desire in you. So there was this strength of teamwork, strength of the appreciation of excellence, and there was also bravery and a lot of curiosity. There was perseverance and zest, like putting in an application even though you know that it's not going to be an easy process, but you persevered on. It was a conscious choice. You were activating that strength, and you also have no idea, how am I going to travel with a Zimbabwe passport, and yet you pressed on, and yet you never know what's the next step. You just went ahead, and let's just see where we can go with this. So I think like bravery, curiosity, perseverance, and zest were pretty um, high on the list as well in this story. I also, now I want to talk about outside the VIA report. I also hear language of legacy. You talk about vision, you talk about passion, your passion for women empowerment, social intelligence, and so on. So I also saw the strength of legacy. I saw a strength of adventure. There's lots of unknown ahead in front of you, but you just like, never mind, let's go, let's just do it. So that's definitely like adventure. And not everyone would be able to stomach the unknown the way that you did. And definitely there was this strength of faith. You talk about seeking guidance from God, and talking about, if God opened this door for me, I think that He will follow it through together with me. And lastly, I think there was also this, towards the end, you kind of ended the story with the strength of gratitude. You were really grateful being able to make the trip, being able to make the trip before the whole pandemic happens, and also expressing desire that, oh, hopefully that I can do it again sometime in the future. So I saw the strengths of hope, teamwork, bravery, curiosity, perseverance, zest, legacy, adventure, faith, and gratitude. What do you think, Laura?
Wow, I'm blown away. I didn't see that entire laundry list, but I think that's really the value of I guess hearing different perspectives, as you said, and just feedback. Because I said when I was just looking at the list of, oh, okay, which strength do I come up with? I wasn't even sure, like, okay, like which story would display that. And so it's amazing how just one experience is able to, I guess, convey so much. So thank you for, I do appreciate the insight and the feedback on that.
I love the way how your face seems to have brightened up, like there's some sense of delight on your face, hearing our story of your story of hope. But it was more than hope. There was so many things going on there. And again, that is what it means when we say strengths don't act alone. Strengths are like your superpower. We all have a unique blend of superpowers. They come in different, we call it strengths constellation, and it's also very contextual based. In this particular story, these are the strengths that came and were activated. They were activated at different points in different degrees to support you, and some of it you activated consciously, some of it you activated unconsciously, like back to the example of social intelligence. You have no idea, it was unconscious. But the more we can activate our strengths consciously, the more it becomes more powerful, and the more we can, more effectively achieve our desired outcome. So thank you for sharing, Laura, and also thank you for giving me and Kevin a chance to do strength spotting, which is an invaluable skill. So now we're going to reverse the role now. So Kevin is going to share one of his superpower story, and then Laura shall do the strength spotting. So Kevin, what story are you going to share with us? Which strength is it?
For me, I'll be sharing a story that illustrates, I think, forgiveness as a strength, as well as hope in combination. Okay, so well, not too long ago, I was actually going through a very painful separation, and eventually that led to a divorce. And the circumstances for the separation were such that inevitably I would become a single father, a single parent, with custody of my daughter then. She was just about 5 years old then. So the immense responsibility and the fear that I was experiencing is probably something that I never want to experience again. Um, the as we were going through the separation, I think the reality of the separation and pending divorce was overwhelming. But I think by God's grace, I was given an epiphany one day, and the epiphany was that of two things. One was a reminder that I could choose how I felt, and I could choose to forgive, even though I didn't feel like forgiving. And the second one was that if I were to speak forgiveness, then eventually the feelings would follow. So, mustering every ounce of effort I could from within, on bended knee, I said a prayer, and there was actually a third epiphany along the way during that prayer. And that prayer was that epiphany, that third one was to forgive myself. So actually, it was a fruitful moment in time where I had epiphany to forgive myself. I choose to forgive myself, and I chose to forgive my ex-wife, then eventually, and from then I was actually able to feel a sense of release. The entire burden of becoming a single parent and a divorcee. Um, Not too worried about the stigma of being a divorce, but nevertheless, there was still the burden of it. And through that release, I was actually free to exercise better decisions along the way. So with that, eventually, by deciding to choose to forgive, regardless of how I felt, committing that to the Lord in prayer, and eventually the feelings followed. They followed so much so that even during meetups with the ex-wife, everything was amicable. I was even able to befriend her future spouse and even assist them in the baptism of their daughter in church, where I was a cameraman. And I remember when I was taking photos from the altar and looking at my daughter with her mother. Her mother was seated next to her new husband, and they were carrying their newly baptized daughter. I was looking at them from the perspective of the altar, and it struck me that wow, I think I think I have been blessed with the grace to be able to forgive, and really that was a outward sign of the inward forgiveness that I had was able to exercise for myself as well as for my ex-wife, and that's my story.
Okay, so I think that this is a story that is personal and very private. So the very fact that Kevin is sharing it, it's already activating the strength of courage right now. So Laura, what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's so powerful, and it's definitely, I think the strengths that you mentioned at the beginning are so evident, that sense of forgiveness and hope, and being able to come out on the other side and share, as Joy said, such a personal and moving story. So thank you for sharing that. I also agree with the courage as well to actually come out and share such a personal story. But I also thought it was, I think, the courage to be a single dad. So, because I think that's not an easy thing to do with a young child. And I think there was also the strength of love as well. So the love for your daughter that gave you that courage to be able to step out and do something that other people might have found very difficult to do. There was that the evidence of spirituality, that sense of, okay, praying through and being able to get to that point of, okay, God, what do you have for me? Help me through this season. I think I also saw, I guess, resilience, and a sense, and I think resilience in the sense of like knowing that you're making a difficult decision, as you said, and without almost without that fear of judgment, and knowing that there might be pushback, there might be challenges, but the resilience to go through as well. I'm also thinking maybe like to some degree there's teamwork as well, both with your daughter, and eventually, getting to the place where with your ex-wife, you're able to come together to support them, helping them to move, and being able to be part of that community. I think it's also open-mindedness, because again, I think that's not something that I think that's an amazing strength, to be able to reconcile to the point where you can actually come alongside and, be with your daughter, be with your ex-wife and her new husband, and have that sense of just openness, open-mindedness, and kindness as well, to, in a sense, to be of service to them on such a special occasion with their baby. I was also thinking there's also, I guess, overall, a lot of it is just social intelligence, just being able to navigate the complexity of life and humanity, and being able to come out on the other side, and gratitude, as you said at the end, just that sense of, being able to look back and just seeing how, how your daughter has that relationship with her mom, and how, in a sense, you've come to a place of peace, and reconciliation, having forgiven, and having a sense of hope for the future, that's brought you to where you are now. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And those are the strengths that, that I spotted in the telling of the story.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks. Thank you. I didn't think of some of the strengths that you mentioned. That was very fruitful to hear from you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, for sharing. So I also spotted some other strengths from Kevin's story of forgiveness and hope. Definitely, as mentioned earlier, the strength of bravery is very evident to even be willing to share this story. And I think spirituality and perspective and faith plays a huge part in this story. Basically, acting the chosen behavior that he wanted even before he felt it, he just persisted until it became more natural. So I think that is something that, again, the bravery and the courage is activated to be willing to do that every day and to choose that behavior even though you're not feeling it. I don't think it's something that everyone can do it so naturally. And to do this behaviors, this chosen behavior, again, self-regulation is activated. You need to have the discipline to do it and to be able to do it consistently. And there was also love and kindness, the desire to forgive others even though wrong has been done, the ability to want to befriend the ex-wife spouse, actively supporting in the daughter's baptism. And these are definitely very clear evidence of love, the strengths of love and kindness being activated. I think that for me, I also see it as there is the strength of leadership as well, leadership of the self to do all of the above that I've described. I think it's the willingness and to actually really take responsibility for his own behavior. He managed and he took control of his own behavior. So I felt there was this leadership of the self going on as well. There's humility and gratitude. There is this particular scene in a baptism that left a deep imprint in Kevin, and for other people, they probably will just they might just credit the whole thing to themselves, their own effort, which of course due credit is due, but yet he doesn't just feel that, he felt gratitude. He felt gratitude to be a part of what's going on, and he also had the humility to credit God for the positive outcome. So there was humility and gratitude even at that scene. So I saw the strengths of not just forgiveness and hope. There was a strength of bravery, spirituality, perspective, faith, self-regulation, love, kindness, leadership, humility, and gratitude. So what are your thoughts, Kevin?
Mamma mia. um, Thank you, ladies. I think if we had done this many moons ago, closer to the separation and divorce, it might have helped a lot earlier to know all this about strengths. It is very humbling to have both of you spot these strengths in that story, in that chapter in my life. And thank you for your feedback. I think as I look at what I've written down as both of you were sharing, I am reminded of one of the earlier lessons I had with Yana's wonderful input, which is that it's a total interplay of our strengths rather than compartmentalizing individual strengths at any one time. um, I think this idea of strengths upon strengths is quite powerful, and that phrase came from Joy, where once we understand our strengths, they are not strengths that stand alone or they are totally independent of one another. In fact, there's a lot of interplay and interdependency, and they tend to build on top of one another, and there is a compounding effect if we are able to label them, if we are able to identify them. So I'm very humbled. I'm very um, I feel very blessed to do this exercise, and I really appreciate both of your inputs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. So I have questions for both of you. How do you feel right now? What is the experience hearing the stories, hearing other people's perspective of the strengths that you have activated, and some of which you even have no clue? How does it make you feel at the moment, like Laura?
It's definitely enlightening and empowering. I think it's like being injected with a new jolt of energy, right? Because it's like, oh wow, I didn't know I was so strong. So yeah, so I think just yeah, and I think just that sense of seeing oneself with new eyes as well. Because I think just that sense of having other people's perspectives on you, because I think sometimes like you don't see what you don't see, and so I guess appreciation as well for community and having people around you who are willing to take the time to share and to see the best in you. So thank you. I feel very uplifted.
Beautiful. So earlier, Laura mentioned that it's energizing, isn't it? It's invigorating. And the best part about this is energy that is renewable and it's free. And strength spotting is almost like a gift that you are giving to the person in front of you. You are giving them a gift that is natural, and you don't even, it doesn't take anything out of you at all. You're simply acknowledging their superpower. It belongs to them in the first place. And also, you mentioned something that we call strengths blindness. We all have our own blind spot spot, right? It's just like driving a car. You think you know everything, but actually you don't, because we all have our own paradigm of the world. In that paradigm, you might not see very often this particular strengths that you actually have. So it is really very powerful when you can do strength spotting for the people around you. It really uplifts them and it gives them a new perspective, a glimpse about some sides of their stronger self that is unknown to them until you share the strength spotting story. Um, Wanting to highlight strength spotting, you must follow it up by evidence where it show up, why you say what you say. That's when people need to be convinced, and especially if you're saying a strength that I never identify or resonate with, I'm going to have doubt about what you're saying. So you want to support the person further by giving evidence. It show up when you did this. That was very clear when you were doing that. So then that's helped the person to be convinced, and the person have to be convinced that that is their strength. That's how it can support them further. So you always highlight what is a specific strength, and then after that you have to show evidence why you say what you say. That's when your gift becomes really powerful. So, and Laura, you were the She in Spotlight for episode 2 of Celebrating She is Strong, where you were at the receiving end of lots of strength spotting stories that was given to you by close friends. So today you had the chance to be at the other end. You were the one spotting Kevin's story. So I'm very curious, how is it like for you now sitting on the other side, being the one to spot the strengths of another person?
Well, it's exciting. I think just that ability to celebrate someone else, and also doing it consciously as well. Because I think I feel like maybe it's something that we don't do as often as we probably should. So yeah, so I am very grateful for the opportunity to get to practice that. And thank you, Joy, as well, for I think this is an invaluable training, because this is something that I can then actually take out and be able to put into practice with the people around me. So yeah, it's a really wonderful experience. So thank you. And thank you, Cav, for sharing your strengths.
Glad to share.
Okay, one last question for you, Laura. How difficult was it for you to do the strength spotting exercise today?
That's an interesting question. I think it helps to have the list in front of me. So as he's sharing and having reviewed it over a couple of days, so internalizing and being like, I wonder what's showing up. So I think it's actually easy. It just needs to be conscious and intentional. So and like you said, when you go beyond the VIA, it's not about using specific labels. It's just about recognizing the strengths and just encouraging and calling them out. So I think it's something that anyone can do, really.
Thank you. That's really encouraging. So the whole point of this activity was I wanted to highlight and prove that this is not something that you need to study or take a certain course. It's really very natural. We kind of do it in some form or shape in real life, but we don't do it, like Laura said, we don't do it intentionally. It's not difficult at all. Use the VIA report to jumpstart your into your language of strengths, lens of strength, just like anything. It takes practice, but this is your first time, and it wasn't that difficult, isn't it? All you need was the report in front of you. Pay attentive attention to what is being shared, and then like it just gets easy. And this is only your first attempt. You found a lot of Kevin's strength that he himself didn't even realize, and this is just your first try. So it would just be even better, and you wouldn't even need any VIA report after this. You'll be like, I heard this, and this. So for me, when I first started learning, I treated it like a game, like spot as many strings as I can, and that's like a game that I play with myself, and it's fun. It energizes me, and it helps me to pay attention to what the other person is saying, because I'm always on the lookout for strengths now. So I found it personally also a useful way to practice mindfulness, being in the now. So thank you, Laura, for your input. So Kevin, what did you learn from this process, and how do you feel right now after all the strength spotting from Laura and from me?
Well, I think some of the thoughts and feelings that are foremost are one. It's a bit awkward initially. It's like learning a new exercise in the gym for the first time, and being able to
Thank you for
practice
going
this.
first so I could follow you.
Well, the uh, I felt I really did need to keep referring because I haven't fully memorized their character strengths. I know some of the strength profile strengths, but in terms of really memorizing it, I haven't quite gotten there. So that's probably one area that I would like to work on, which is to start really strengthening those, as Joy says, the neural pathways about strengths, and being able to solidify them in my mind so that I can, call them, and when I spot a particular strength, I can actually identify it accurately. So, so this idea that I learned from Joy over a year ago, which is about the language of strengths, yeah, that can only come into play when one, we are aware about our strengths, and there are such things as strengths assessments, and two, that it really does require effort, purposeful, mindful effort to put this at the forefront of the way we look at ourselves in the mirror, as well as when we look at others. One thing that I continually derive strength from, pun intended, is the fact that as we are spotting other people's strengths, like as I'm spotting your strengths, Laura, I'm also reminded of the beauty of the human person. And each of us are so unique. Each of us have our stories. Each of us have our adventures, or sometimes misadventures. And yet we are here today because somewhere, even though we couldn't quite label our strengths, even though we may not have been able to identify them as strengths, we have pulled through because we drew actually upon our inner strengths, our character strengths, as Via calls it, and also our realized and unrealized strengths. And this this exercise, I purposefully didn't set any expectations so that I will be um, just going with the flow. I think the main outcome for me here is that the blessings I receive, and in return, I'm also able to bless others by spotting their strengths. I think this in itself makes this exercise um, simply beautiful. And so, thank you, Joy, for forcing me to do this.
Okay, I'll settle with you later, Kevin, about that part. Okay, so coming back to strength spotting. So I want to share this tip that I think is useful. So what's going on when you do strength spotting for someone else? Very simply, you are putting a mirror in their face, right? And say, this is your strongest self. Right, I've identified all these superpowers of you. You're using the mirror. So I hear concerns about, like, oh, I haven't memorized the via report and all that. I think forget about that. Don't let that be a barrier to your journey for strength development and in building your language of strength. So the first mirror should not be the strength assessment report. Your first mirror should be your go with your instinct and trust your observation about what you're hearing. You don't need any report at all, right? So long as you understand English. Someone sharing a story with you, wow, I can hear this, I can hear this, I can hear this. Just remember three things, because here we are typing and we are taking notes, but of course in daily life, now I'm trying to keep it as realistic as possible. Of course you won't be like jotting down notes when people are sharing with you. Just remember two or three that you intentionally want to share with the person after they finish sharing about these two strengths that is showing up. So go with your instinct and trust your observation. That is your first mirror for your friend. Okay, your second mirror then is the strengths assessment. If there is opportunity, or if this is someone very close to you, you already memorized their top three, then yes, then you can say, oh, and and this is like your number one superpower, and then you just used it just now and you can do all that. So don't get stressed about, oh, I must memorize it, because not everyone that you see took the VIA report. Okay, that's the reality of it. So go with your first mirror. Always go with your first mirror. First, go with your own instinct. Trust your observation. So don't get stressed out about the VIA report. The VIA report, to be honest, is a really what we're doing right now. I feel it's a very privileged situation, right? Where we all have done our VIA report. We have the report in front of us. We're prepared. We're ready to take notes. This is a very privileged learning situation for strength sporting. In real life, you will not have that. But this is very powerful because once you even try this once, experience this once, because I'm very confident now that Kevin and Laura, you're going to go away. You're going to be different because you already are different. Because now you're very sensitive to the language of strengths. Your ears have been activated. So you don't need a report after that. Moving forward, you can do that if you want more intentional training. Otherwise, strength spotting, this skill, as far as I'm concerned, you have already learned it. It's just how well you want it to be, how much of a habit you want it to be. Is it going to be a part of who you are, or is it just one of those skills that you learn and then after a while you park it one side? All of this is up to you, right? Again, it's conscious behavior. So don't get stressed out about the VIA report. This is a great opportunity then, if there's some people that you want to bond with, work together with, encourage them to do the VIA report, because the character strength is free. It's such a privilege that Dr. Martin Solomon has given to us. He very intentionally, purposefully said, I must keep this free. So take full advantage of that. If these people are close to you or you need to work with them, encourage them to do the VIA character strength report. And it's so empowering, right, to work with someone who always recognize your strength. Oh, I can see now why that's your top 5 strength. You're always using it. I think that your work partner is going to feel very good about the relationship, and about themselves and about you. So it's a really upward spiral when you do strength sporting, when you embark in the language and the lens of strength. So don't get stressed about the VIA report. When there's opportunity, encourage others to use it. Otherwise, just trust yourself, go with your instinct, and trust your observation. Just give them the gift of the first mirror. So I hope that would help. So don't add too many barriers in front of your journey. So just relax, have fun with it. Just play a game. Okay, every day I'm going to talk to one person. I'm going to spot their strength. So it doesn't have to be everyone, because in the beginning it's challenging. Just play a game. Okay, every day just one person. When I talk to them, I'm going to spot their strength. So this is also, by the way, the homework for this week. So the homework includes listing down who you're going to meet, talk to for the whole week, and then specifically already select who from which day you're going to strength spot, and then note down the strengths that you have spotted. And then as the days goes by, keep a lookout for the strengths that you have not yet spotted from the 24 character strengths. And then record the day, and also don't forget to list down the strengths that you have used for the day. Strength spot yourself as well. Give this gift that you're giving freely, give it to yourself as well. Strength spot yourself and acknowledge your own strengths activation for the day. Which strengths did you activate? Towards the end of the week, then try and spot those strengths that you have yet to uncover during the week. Maybe there was a lot of this strengths, but then this strengths, because the whole point here is we want you to get familiarized with all the 24 character strengths. So towards the end of the week, start to spot those strengths that you haven't encountered. Then you want to deliberately keep a lookout, open your eyes, open your ears, keep a lookout for those strengths, so that when it happens, you are familiar with it. Anytime this week, also share your experience of strength spotting, post it on this group, or with your accountability partner. When you are able to share and verbalize, again, you are affirming and you are really engrading your strength spotting learning. And then also there are some strength spotting resources that's available this week from the different episodes, in particularly from Celebrating She Is Strong. Notice the different way that people spot strengths. There is no right or wrong. You just want to get used to it. The goal here is to immerse yourself in the lens and in the language of strengths, not just in how you verbalize it. Also be sensitive how other people say it, so that when someone spot your strength, you'll be like, I think you just spot my strength. You are given the opportunity to acknowledge and say thank you for recognizing my strength. But if you're not familiar with how other people talk about strengths, then you miss the opportunity to show your appreciation to other people for acknowledging your strength. When you show appreciation, you are encouraging the other person to continue to acknowledge your strength. And that is really what you want. You want to be surrounded by people in your environment that always affirm and acknowledge your strengths. Likewise, you want to do the same for other people and for yourself with strength spotting. And then it just becomes this vicious upward positive spiral. So that is the goal of strength spotting. It is a really powerful skill. So I would encourage everyone to really make the strength spotting skill a part of who you are. Okay, so any last sharing, Laura, Kevin? Any last words you want to share?
Well, I think first is thank you, Joy, because I think part of your strength is activating people in their strengths. So thank you for activating our strength spotting and putting that to work in us. So yeah, and just the zest and the creativity that you have in coming up with all these different ideas and expressions to really help people unlock and activate who they are. So thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, Laura. You're clearly a very fast learner, the love of learning. You're already like acknowledging my strengths. I'm very impressed. That's great.
Yep, indeed. I think the opportunity here to participate in this exercise is quite a blessing. It's a wonderful Friday, isn't it? It makes our Friday a very enlightening and also a very powerful Friday evening, and we are able to see the best in one another. And Joy, I have to live with your zest every day, so that certainly is something that I'm blessed with, and to be able to participate here and look at another person, in this case, a wonderful person in Laura, and of course yourself, to look through the lens of strength. I think that is something that I learned over a year ago, and still need a lot more practice to, because I think the prior to discovering strengths, we try to see the best in others, but it's really quite easy to be very critical of ourselves and of others as well. And the language of strengths is so much more powerful and so much more of a blessing to others as it is to ourselves. So this exercise, it's certainly a very much appreciated exercise, and thank you, Laura, and thank you too, Joy.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kev.
Definitely. Definitely, this has been an enjoyable session for everyone. I didn't expect it to last for. It's going to be an hour. Wow! So I think like everyone's having a good time. That's why it took so long. So lots of learning here. So the audience, I hope that you really watch this and try and practice strength spotting in your own life. Now, just pick one person. Just pick one person to do that with. If you can pick one person to do with you consciously, like the way that we did it in this episode, that would be great. Even if you can't, it doesn't matter. It can be just a normal conversation you're having with your mom or with your daughter, and then try to acknowledge their strengths. If they give you a strange expression, don't worry about it. They're just curious that you are speaking to them slightly differently. But I'm sure that they appreciate that their strength is being acknowledged. You yourself have to be comfortable in the first place with the language of strengths in order for other people to feel comfortable too. So all of this will come with time and with practice. Don't worry, just go out there, have fun, acknowledge other people's superpowers and your own superpowers. So thank you for watching this and have a great weekend ahead. We're going to end this episode with our superpower pose. Okay, catch you guys. Bye.